All right, so the purpose of this activity is just to get you used to seeing data in what we call a two-way table. And we call it a two-way table because the data is presented in both columns and rows. So each of these numbers represents something within two different groups. For example, this 5 represents a vegetarian dish that is also scored as a 3. So I'm just going to read through this scenario, and then we're going to answer some questions based on the data that's presented in this table. So a college cafeteria received a petition from students to offer healthier meat, vegetarian, and vegan dishes. In response to the petition, the cafeteria conducted an analysis of its existing menu to determine the current state of those options. The results are summarized in the table below. The analyst used a sliding scale based on nutrient levels compared against calorie, sugar, and sodium counts to determine the health score, a score of 1 being the least healthy and 5 being the healthiest. So these are the dishes that the cafeteria currently serves, and they've categorized each of them into one of these 3 categories. They're either a meat dish, a vegetarian dish, or a vegan dish, and then they've been scored based on how healthy they are, a 1 being very unhealthy and a 5 being the healthiest option they have. So when you see a two-way table, the best thing to do, if it's not already given to you, is to add up these numbers and understand what the totals are for each row and each column. So we want to know in total how many meat dishes are there. So if I add all of these numbers together, what do I end up with? And if I add 3, 4, 8, and 5, I'll get 20. All right, and then I should add the other columns as well. So go ahead and do that. And then we should add the rows as well, right? So this is a 20 representing all of the meat dishes. There are 20 meat dishes. But some of those meat dishes are rated a 4, some are rated a 2. So now what I want to do is know how many dishes in total, regardless of type, were rated with a low health score of a 1. So there are 5 meat dishes that have a score of 1. It looks like there are 8 meat dishes with a score of 2, 17 3s, 11 4s, and only 1 dish was rated a 5. The last thing that I think is important for you to have a note of, and some tables are going to give you this information, is you should have a grand total here because that's an important number that we're going to be working with quite a bit. So how many dishes are there total here? And you should be able to get this number by either adding these together or adding these together. They should total the exact same value. So if I add 20 plus 14 plus 8, I get 42. And I would want to check that by adding 5, 8, 17, 11, and 1, I also get 42. And I do, so that means that I haven't made a mistake in adding up any of my values, and now I've got a lot of information that I can use to help me answer some questions. So I'm going to ask a couple questions here. The video is going to pause, and you're going to be asked to answer that question before moving forward with the video. So my first question to you is, if we were to choose a current dish at random, what is the probability that that dish is a meat dish? So now what you're going to see is a solution to that question. So I guess I'll just write the solution out in blue and then I'll get rid of it before the next selection. So what I'm asking here is the probability of a meat dish. And if we use our same notation, that's just going to be how many meat dishes are there divided by how many total dishes are there. What are the number of dishes in the total sample space? And I won't necessarily use this notation every time, but we should be reminded that this is essentially what we're doing every time we calculate a probability. So the number of meat dishes in total is 20. And the number of total dishes that the cafeteria serves is 42. And we do want to make sure we reduce that. So if you left your answer as 20 over 42, that would not be scored correct for this activity. You would want to leave it as 10 over 21. So that's the probability of selecting a meat dish. All right, so my second question is going to be, what is the probability that a dish selected at random has a health score of 3? And so now we can calculate that. I I want to know what the probability is of selecting a dish with a health score of 3. So how many dishes have a health score of 3, and how many total dishes are there in our sample space? Well, it looks like there are 17 dishes that have a score of 3. And again, there are still 42 total dishes that we could possibly have. So since 17 is a prime number, we can't reduce that, and we would leave our answer as 17 over 42. Okay, just a couple more, and then I'll ask a couple challenging ones as well towards the end here. What is the probability that a dish selected is a vegan dish? Okay, so if I want to know the probability of a vegan dish, I need to know the number of vegan dishes, and I'm going to divide that by the number of dishes in the sample space. And so there are 8 vegan dishes, right? These dishes here, that's the total number of vegan dishes over 42. And again, I can reduce that, but I can't go beyond 4 over 21, so that's my answer there. Okay, 2 more questions, and these are intended to challenge you and sort of go beyond what we've done in the previous lesson. What's the probability that a dish selected is not a meat dish? And so when we calculate this, the probability of not meat, we really have to think about what we're including here. What is the number of dishes that are not meat dishes divided by the total number of dishes in the sample space? So again, the number of dishes in the sample space is 42. We haven't changed that yet. We haven't run into a situation where the sample space has been restricted at all. And now I need to know how many dishes are not meat dishes. So vegetarian dishes are not meat dishes, and vegan dishes are not meat dishes. So if I add those two together, I'll get the total number of dishes that are not meat dishes. All right, so that's going to be 22 dishes. It's all the dishes except for these 20. And so when I reduce that, it's 11 over 21. The last question here. What is the probability of selecting a dish that has a health score of 4 and is vegetarian? So the probability of selecting a dish that has a health score of 4 and is vegetarian. So again, using our notation, the number of dishes that are a 4 and vegetarian divided by the number of total dishes. We still have 42 dishes, but the number of dishes that are both 4 and vegetarian, those two, the column that represents vegetarian and the row that represents 4 intersect there. So we actually have 4 dishes that are both rated a 4 and are vegetarian. And we can reduce that to 2 21sts. All right, so that's an introduction to the two-way tables. All you have to do here is watch the video, answer the questions, and this is going to be a pretty regular Wednesday activity where you'll have an Edpuzzle video that reinforces something that we've been doing and extends that information a little bit, because you'll notice we dealt with this and statement, which is something that we're going to tackle in a little bit greater depth in class over the next couple of days.